Hello everyone. So I am going to do this video to finally get through all the books that I've been reading, ancient scriptures from the Bible, the book of Joel, book of Samuel, book of Enoch, the Talmud, the Kabbalah, the Tibetan book of the dead, and the Nag Hammadi library, book of Job. I have been doing my reading because I have been channeling information about the animal sacrifices, and of course before we had the human sacrifices, which is not as common now, but the animal sacrifices are still very common. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because even though I stopped my initiations because of the animal sacrifices, the relationship that I have built with the spirits that I work with that normally would require those sacrifices continue to be as strong or more strong than before. So obviously I know the animal sacrifices and the initiations didn't necessarily prevent me from continuing this love relationship with these energies that I work with. Especially I'm talking about the orishas, because in 21 divisions, in my division, we don't do animal sacrifices at all in order to connect with the divinities, that the energies that we work with, the spirits, the luas that we work with. So I'm referring more to the orishas and the Yoruba pantheon, right? The Yoruba pantheon, where a lot of animal sacrifices are extremely common and is required in order for you to go through the different initiations. Because I didn't want to go through the animal sacrifices, I stopped those initiations. But what I noticed is that my relationship with those energies hasn't changed. If anything, it has improved, to be honest. So I'm going to do this. It's going to be a long presentation because I don't want to I want to make sure that I give you everything that I have found. And I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of reading, a lot of reading, to the point where it has been exhausting. I have been channeling a lot. I have received a lot of information in my channelings. I didn't want to share because I didn't want to bring negativity. I didn't want to start any arguments with anyone. It is okay if you do your thing. I think everybody goes through their own process of ascension. And what I like to think is because we all have different paths, that it doesn't mean that you have to follow what I do and I don't have to follow what you do. So we don't have to agree, but we can be respectful. So I do expect people to be polite, to be respectful. I'm sharing this because this is what I'm working on for myself, and for those that are looking to learn also and get a different perspective from people that are going through different things, so that they might be wondering too if they need to go through the different situations, animal sacrifices, in order to get to the initiations. I know there are people that are already doing IFA initiations without the animal sacrifices. So definitely, my goodness, I wish I remember her name. And I saw one of her videos and I just loved her because, you know, she's part of a house, a temple that doesn't do animal sacrifices anymore. And I think that is the new earth. We don't need to do animal sacrifices in order for us to connect with these energies. So I have compiled a lot of information. So I'm going to ask you to be patient. You might want to come back more than once to listen to this, maybe break it down in a few sessions, because it is going to be a lot of information. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, I don't want to give you something that is halfway, because you know, I have been doing my work. I have been channeling. I have been meditating. I've been asking my dreams. I even did a quantum session a while back to ask more information. In that quantum session, what they reveal, and I didn't know this was going to come out, but they revealed some things that I was like, wow. And some of that information is actually in the books of the Nag Hammadi library, and in the book of Enoch, in the secret book of John. And if you guys remember, a while back in August, I did a quantum healing session on someone in Spanish, and John, the Apostle John, was one of the gatekeepers. And it's funny because he gave me some clues back then. I didn't know those were clues for me too, not just for the client. So I listened back to his session, and if we remember correctly, John, and I'm going to read my little note here, John 114, and later we're going to talk about John 114. That was a major clue, and he talked about the fact that he was a gatekeeper in that quantum healing sessions, and it is the gatekeeper for 114 to go through the gates of the really deep fears that people have, to work with the shadow self. And then he also gave us information about what is the meaning of 114. So 1 is unity, creation, and if you add it together, 1 plus 1 plus 4 is equal 6. And he talked about the 6 major homeworks that we have to do in order for us to go through the gate to work with the shadow. But and if you divide it by 2, is equal 3, which is the Trinity, right? But it's also substance, form, and eternity, material, immaterial, and constancy. And it is basically the soul, the body, and the human spirit. So that was a major clue for me later that I realized not too long ago, because I was like, wow, isn't this crazy how things are really coming together for what I've been channeling. And another thing that I want to talk about is when we talk about the immaterial and material, we're talking about the invisible spirit. And I have some notes here. If we think about what is God, so let's first define what is God. God is the energy that we cannot understand, that we cannot describe, because it's beyond what we can understand in this human language. It is illimitable, like there is no limits to it. It's unfathomable. We cannot picture, grasp it. It's invisible, it's eternal, it's you cannot put a name to it. It doesn't have limits. It's beyond anything. It's like you cannot we cannot comprehend what God is in this human form. It's eternal, it's immeasurable, it's we cannot even say it, because we cannot comprehend it, how big it is. It is an immeasurable light, pure, holy, immaculate. It is not something that I can say, even because it doesn't have those words in this language, in this human. It is perfection, is blessedness, and divinity. His thoughts become reality, and she appear. And she is the fourth thought, is the image of spirit. So this is actually pretty interesting, because later we're going to find out what exactly that means. And when we talk about the snake, before I forget, I want to make sure that you know that when I talk about the snake, according to the Shiny Ones book, you can find the Shiny Ones book online and order online on PDF or print, and I'll put a link to it. It's a pretty good read if you're patient. It's like 700 pages, but it's very, very valuable. The snake, when they refer to the snake, they also make a reference to the fact that the serpent is a goddess, is a shiny one, is a serpent lady, and they make a reference to it as being part of the Anunnakis, the Ananash. And when they do that, what they're saying is that the serpent is associated with rejuvenation because of its ability to basically shed its skin. But also, when appearing in the astral body, the Ananash can change their appearance. So they shape-shift. And this is very important, because basically in one of the stories that we find out in the Garden of Eden is that the woman changed into a snake so she could, so that she couldn't be found by the other Archons that were looking for her. And at one point, just to make sure that they didn't find her, because they knew that she could shape-shift into something else, she also shape-shifted into a tree. That reminds me of ayahuasca, by the way. Not that there is any evidence about that. This is just me in my imagination. But I always I found this very interesting, because when we talk about the Garden of Eden, and eventually it all will make sense. I know I'm getting so many different things, because it is a lot to comprehend in one sitting. That's why it took me a long time to put all the clues together. But when we talk about the, let me start at the beginning. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. Okay, so let's see if I can do this, because this is going to be a long one. The animal sacrifices, we know before we had human sacrifices, and now more recently is just the animal sacrifices. This is important because when we talk about the Archons, let's talk about who the Archons are, and how did they become the human creators, because we know the Archons are fallen angels, and the fallen angels that were cast out of heaven created a human to be a copy, basically to be like a slave race. But unfortunately, something went wrong, and we'll talk about why. Because who was the first Archon is actually very interesting, and I'm going to start there because it's going to make sense in a second. So Sophia, the Father, the Mother, and Spirit, the saw itself and decided to create. The woman appeared, she appeared. So what does this mean? Let me make sure that I get so I give you the reference. What does this mean? With the book of John is where we find this information very clearly. And the book of John was one of the major clues that was given to me in the trance to go into the book of John. The problem is that the book of John in the New Testament, even the old one, is not very clear what's going on. So you really have to go into the Hammadi library to understand what's going on. So the book of John is when Christ tells John that he's going to reveal to him, one of his apostles, what's going on, the creation of this race, this human planet, and all of that stuff. And then in the book of John, Jesus is the Father, the Mother, and the Son. But what they're saying is Jesus is not a human. Jesus is inside of us, the Father, the Son, and the Mother. But if we really go into the book of John, we also understand the supreme deity, the primal divine triad, Father, Mother, and Child, the divine realm brought into being by him, and we'll find out how. And when he brought when Sophia, wisdom, the creation of a lower realm, at the hands of her ill-begotten son, Yaldabaoth, and his demonic underlings, and became dominated by the inferior powers that now control it. This part concludes with Yaldabaoth's boast, I am a jealous God, and there is no other God besides me. But why would he need to make a mention of that there are no other gods if he is the only one? He wouldn't make that statement, right? So Sophia gives birth to Yaldabaoth, and Yaldabaoth decides that he wants to create his lower realm where he can be the main one, where he could be completely the main thing. But he doesn't know there is something, I guess he doesn't know that there is something above him, right? So let's talk about, let me start with the book of John. So Christ tell him, I'm going to tell you everything. And he says, okay. And then the one is the invisible spirit. We should not think of it as a god or like a god, for it's greater than a god, because it has nothing over it and no lord above it. It doesn't exist within anything inferior. And it continues, la 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 la. And you know, the one is unfathomable, immeasurable, invisible, illimitable, eternal, immutable, unnameable, all those things. And then he talks about how the Father is the one who beholds him in the light surrounding him, which is the spring of living water, and provides all the realms. He reflects on his image everywhere, seizes in the spring of the Spirit, and becomes in love with his water. For his image is in the spring of pure luminous water surrounding him. His thought become a reality, and she who appeared in his presence is shining light came forth. She is the first power who preceded everything and came forth from his mind as a forethought of the all. So basically, God sees his reflection, and she, the fourth that appeared. The fourth that is the image of the Spirit, just to be clear. She becomes the universal womb, for she precedes everything. She's the mother, father, the first human, the Holy Spirit, the triple male, the triple power. And foreknowledge appear and stood by forethought. This is the one who came from the thought of the invisible virgin spirit. Foreknowledge glorified the Spirit, and the Spirit perfected power, Barbelo, for because of her foreknowledge had come into being. So Barbelo asked to be given life eternal, and the invisible Spirit consented. Life eternal appeared, and they stood together and glorified the invisible Spirit and Barbelo. So she asked again to be given truth, and the invisible Spirit consented. Truth appeared, and they stood together and glorified the good invisible Spirit and is Barbelo. Because of her, they have come into being. These are the 5 aeons of the Father. They are the first human, the image of the invisible Spirit, that is forethought, which is Barbelo, and thought, along with foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth. There are 5 androgynous aeons, which are the 10 aeons, which is the Father. Now, the only child of the mother father that had come forth, the only offspring, the only child of the Father, the pure light, the invisible virgin spirit, rejoiced over the light that was produced, that came forth from the first power of the Spirit for star, who is Barbelo. So then the child stood in the presence of the Spirit, and the Spirit anointed the child. As soon as the child received it from the Spirit, he glorified the Holy Spirit and perfected for that. Because of her, it had come forth. So the child asked to be given mind. Mind appeared and stood by the anointed and glorified the Spirit and Barbelo. Mind wished to create something by means of the word of the invisible Spirit. Its will became a reality and appeared with mind and the light, glorifying it. Word followed will. Word, like John 1:14, word is the God, God is the word. Word follow will. For the anointed, the divine self-generated created everything by the word. Life eternal, will, mind, and foreknowledge stood together and glorified the invisible Spirit and Barbelo. For because of her, they had come into being. So the third generated child of himself and Barbelo to perfection, so that the child might stand before the great invisible Virgin as the divine self-generated, the anointed, who honor the Spirit with loud acclaim. The child came forth through forethought. So the will thought life, interesting. So anyways, eventually goes into, and this is page 112 in the Hammadi test. There are 12 eons, the child of the great one, the self-generated one, the anointed one, and then it goes into the falling of Sophia. So Now the fourth that of the perfect mind through express will of the invisible spirit and the will of the self-center. So Sophia basically is born, and Sophia thinks for herself, why do I need to have the father? I can do it myself. I can do it myself and have a song, create something from just me. And she creates Jalbada, Jaldabao. Oh my God, that's a terrible name for me to pronounce. Anyway, so the invisible mind, she basically thinks to herself, I can do this myself. I don't need something else. But she made a big mistake by doing it by herself, because what she created was something crazy. So now Sophia, who's in the wisdom of insight and who constitute an aeon, conceived of a thought from herself with the concession of the invisible spirit and for knowledge. She wanted to bring forth something like herself without the consent of spirit, who had not given approval without her partner and without his consideration. The male did not give approval. She did not find her partner, and she considered this without the spirit consent and without the knowledge of her partner. Nevertheless, she gave birth, and because of the invisible power within her, her thought was not an idle thought. Something came out of her that was imperfect and different in appearance from her, for she had produced it without her partner. It did not resemble his mother and was misshapen. When Sophia saw that what she had desired had produced, it changed into the figure of a snake with the face of a lion. Its eyes were like flashing bolts of lightning. She cast it away from her outside the realm so that none of the immortals could see it. She had produced it ignorantly. She surrounded it with a bright cloud and put a throne in the middle of the cloud so that no one will see it except the Holy Spirit, who is called the mother of the living. She named her offspring Yalbadao. Jaldabao. So Jaldabao decides, okay, I'm going to be the ruler here. This is the first ruler, the Archon who took the great power from his mother. Then he left her and moved away from the place where he was born. He took control and created for himself other eons with luminous fire, which still exists. He made it with the mindlessness, meaning the humans in him, or whoever he created, and produce authorities for himself. I think they're referring about the humans that he made it with. So anyways, Jaldabal decides that he's going to be the god in this lower realm, and he says, I am the god and there is no other god besides me, since he did not know from where his own strength had come. The rulers each created 7 powers for themselves, and then he goes on to talk about all of that, right? But then Jaldabal decides to create Adam, a copy of himself, to be a slave. And something happened. They made everything. The Archons, Jaldabal and the other eons, the Archons decide to give each one of them, give a piece. One created one eye, the other one created another eye, the one created the nose, the one created a mouth, the other one created the cerebellum, the brain, the cerebral, the spine. So different pieces come from different Archons. But it couldn't move. So Sophia repents. Sophia realizes that she has done a mistake, and she asks the father, the mother, the spirit, the father, the mother, to forgive her and help her. So they send 5 angels to tell Jaldabal, what you need to do is breathe into Adam so that he can move, because they created him, but he couldn't move. And he didn't know better, so he followed the orders. But when he did that, he basically gave his power to Adam. And the spirit of him, by blowing into Adam, came into Adam, and the spirit was the woman. So what they're saying is that basically the woman was hiding inside of Adam, and they didn't want Yaldabaoth to know that she was hiding inside of him, so that he wouldn't try to do something before it was, before they were ready to figure out what was going on, before they have full consciousness. So Yaldabaoth says to the authorities, let's create a human after the image of God and with likeness to ourselves, so that this human image may give us light. This is a major clue. The major clue, because what is light to them is energy. So what did they need from Adam? They needed energy from Adam. They needed, they needed energy, light from him. So they all created with their respective power and features. Each one of them contributed to the physical feature corresponding to the human body, right? And they call it Adam. That is this name may give us power of light. Now, when Yaldabaoth and his authority created a psychical man with a psychical form, they created a soul man, his body composed entirely of the animating soul. His physical body of flesh and blood will be constructed later. Interesting. So they all provide for them to create Adam. Then Adam receives the spirit and life. Once Sophia decides to ask for forgiveness and help, God, Father, Mother says, okay, we're going to help you. And Yaldabaoth breathe some of your spirit into the face of Adam, and the body will arise. So he does, and the mother power went out of Yaldabaoth into the physical body that has been made to be like the one who is from the beginning. The body moved and became powerful, and it was enlightened. When they realized that Adam was enlightened and could think more clearly than they, and it was stripped of evil, they took and threw Adam into the lowest part of the whole material realm. The blessed, benevolent, merciful Mother Father had compassion for the mother power that had been removed from the first ruler. The Archons might be able to overpower the physical perceptible body once again. So they try with his benevolent and most merciful spirit, the mother father sent a helper to Adam, enlightened inside, who is from the mother father and who was called life. She helped the whole creature, laboring with it, restoring it to its fullness, teaching about the descent of the sea, teaching it about the way of ascent, which is the way of descent. This is a major clue. Enlightened inside was hidden within Adam, so that the Archons might not recognize her, but that insight might be able to restore what the mother lacked. So they decide to imprison Adam by sending him to the Garden of Eden. And when they sent him to the Garden of Eden, they took them to the Garden of Eden and told him not to eat, but don't eat from that tree that we all know about. So the snake comes and says, why you should eat? Why wouldn't you eat? And that's the creation of the Garden of Eden. The serpent instructed them to eat the weakness of sexual desire and destruction. The first ruler knew that Adam was disobedient to him because of enlightened insight was within Adam, which made Adam stronger of mind than him. He wanted to recover the power that he himself had passed on to Adam. So he brought deep sleep upon Adam. And what is the deep sleep? The Savior said, it is not as Moses wrote and you heard. He said in his first book, he put Adam to sleep. Rather, this sleep was a loss of sense. Thus the first ruler said to the prophet, I should make their minds sluggish, that they may neither understand nor discern. This is very important, discernment. Anyways, the first ruler wanted to take Adam's the first ruler wanted to take Eve from Adam's side, but enlightening insight cannot be apprehended. Although darkness pursued her, it did not apprehend her. The first ruler removed part of Adam's power and created another figure in the form of a female, like the image of insight that had appeared to him. He put the part that he had taken from the power of the human being into the female creature. It did not happen, however, the way Moses said Adam's trait. So it didn't happen like he said that it was done from Adam's trait. At once enlightened insight appeared and removed the veil that covered his mind. He sobered up from the drunkenness of darkness. He recognized his counterpart and said, "This is now my bone from my bones and flesh from my flesh." So basically, Sister Sophia is the one who descended in innocent manner to restore what she lacked. For this reason, she was called life, that is, mother of the living, by the forethought of the sovereignty of heaven and by the insight that appeared to Adam. As for me, I appear in the form of an eagle upon the tree of knowledge, which is the insight of the pure enlightenment forethought, that I might teach the human beings and awaken them from the death of sleep. This is talking about 116. This is talking about the book of Genesis, the book of Genesis, and how this is created and how some of those things are known, what they're known really what they're saying. And it's talking about the fact that Christ was seen as an eagle upon the tree of knowledge, which is the insight of pure enlightenment forethought, so that he might teach the human beings and awaken them from the deep sleep. Just like Adam had to be awakened by the spirit within, by Eve, the spirit life, that the same way Christ is saying that he was upon the tree of knowledge, which is the insight of the pure enlightenment forethought, so that he might teach the human beings and awaken them from the deep sleep, from the death of sleep. Insight appeared to them as light and awakened their minds. So, this goes on and on and on about Jaldabod and everything that he tries to do to make sure that people, follow him and saying all of that. So the human beings were made to drink water of forgetfulness by the first ruler, so that they might not know where they had come from. For a time, the sea remained and held, so that when the Spirit descends from the holy realms, it may rise up the sea and heal what it lacks, that the entire realm of fullness may be holy and lacking nothing. And then he goes on and on. These souls may, in page 129, these souls will be made to follow another soul in whom the spirit of life dwells, and she is saved through that one. Then she will not be thrust into flesh again. Let's see if there is anything else here that I want to mention. Just because this is, you need to understand this before we understand the sacrifices, because it will give you the basis for what we're going to talk about now. In the book of the Gospel of Judas, we all know that Judas is the one that betrayed Jesus and all of that, but what they're saying here in the book of the Hammadi library is that this is the secret book of the Gospel of Judah, the secret text of the Gospel of Judah, in page 761 of the Hammadi. In this book here, it's talking about Jesus coming to Judah and saying, "Listen, I'm going to tell you everything. Unfortunately, people are going to be." People are going to think you are a betrayer because of what I need to ask you to do for me, basically, right? Something like that. And what happened is that Jesus tell him, "I'm going to tell you everything, but you need to do something for me, and at the end we'll find out what it is." So they're the 12 disciples and he's the 13th one, and what he's saying on page 762, the disciples behold the temple. Jesus said, what kind of people are the priests? Some abstain for 2 weeks. Some sacrifice their own children to order their wives in praise and humility with one another. Some have sex with men. Some perform acts of murder. Some commit all sorts of sins and lawless deeds. And the men who stand before the altar call upon your name and throw all the actions of the deficiency. The altar becomes full. So Judah is saying, why is this happening? Like Jesus said, what kind of people are these priests? They say blah, 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 blah. And Judas wants to understand. And then he says, so in this page, should I just break it down to you because this is going to be long. So this is important for those that are trying to understand about the sacrifices. Page 763. I tell you again, my name has been written on, and there is no, nothing there. That part is missing of the generations of the stars through the generations of people. They have planted trees in my name without fruit in a shameful way. Jesus said to them, you are the ones presenting the offerings at the altar you have seen. That is the God you serve. And you are the 12 men you have seen. And the cattle brought in are the offerings you have seen. They are the multitude you lead astray before the altar. The ruler of this planet, right? So will stand and use my name in his manner, and generations of pious people will cling to him. After him, another man will come forward from those who are immortal, and another one will come forward from the child killers, and another one from one that has sex with men, and those who abstain. We are like angels. They are the stars that bring everything to its end. For the generations of people, it has been blah, 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 blah. Jesus said to them, stop sacrificing that you have on the altar, since they are over your stars and your angels, and they have already come to their end there. So let them be before you and let them go. And then the text breaks down. So basically, Jesus is telling, let them stop sacrificing the restoration, and a lot of the text is missing. It wasn't recovered. So what they could recover says, let them stop the sacrifice. Let them stop sacrificing that you have on the altar, since they're over your stars and your angels, and they have already come to their end there. Because the Archons will be punished for what they have done. Anything else that I want to mention here? It's just so much. And then Jesus tells him, Judas, you're going to be the 13th, and you will be cursed by the other generations, but eventually you will rule over them. In the last days, they will. And then there is missing test. And then Judas says that, okay, so let me just share this. Jesus teaches Judah about the divine and the universe. Jesus says, come, that I may teach you all about the things that no person will see, for there is a great and infinite realm, whose dimensions no angelic generation could see, in which is the great invisible spirit. So, and talking about the angelic could not see, he's talking about the Archons. And then Jesus said, this is the reason why God commanded Michael to give the spirit of people to them on loan for adoration, but the great one commanded Gabriel to give spirit to the great generation without a king, and the spirit and the soul, therefore the rest of the soul. And this is talking about the snake, because the snake in the Shiny One books talks about Gabriel, and Gabriel is the one that supposedly, there is evidence that Gabriel was the one that told Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge, from the fruit of knowledge. So you're going to have to read this to really understand. Let me see if there's anything else here. It's just so much. So in page 768, Jesus said, I'll tell you the truth. This baptizing in my name, to me, I'll tell you the truth. Judah, those who bring sacrifices to sackcloth, God, everything evil. The text is missing, unfortunately. I don't know if you guys can see this. You can pause it and read it. Maybe not. Maybe it's too blurry. But this is interesting because he's talking about, you will sacrifice the man who bears me. And then Judah at the end goes and turns Jesus in, but it was already determined that Jesus was going to leave the body because he had to, and he had the capacity to choose to leave it. So the body was just a body. It wasn't Jesus anymore. And Judah received money for his compensation, so everybody called him a traitor. So let me see if I can share my screen to see if there is anything else that I want to discuss here. This is a lot, I know. I'm just trying to make sure that you follow me because, you know, you don't have to believe, you don't have to agree, but if you're interested in knowing more, definitely get the Hammadi scriptures, get the book of Enoch, start reading some of those that have the clues, not the revised versions. Get the ones that have been properly edited so that you can do your own research. So the animal sacrifices, like I said, I was told that it's actually feeding the dark energies. In the book of Joel, it talks about the sacrifices, and if people in Jerusalem do not do the sacrifices, they were not going to receive the favor from the Lord, which is Yaldaba. So Yaldaba is basically, even in the book of Joel, you'll see that they're talking about the sacrifices. No one brings offerings to drink anymore. And then they talk about how the priests are the ones consuming. You see here the priests, those are deserved to eat, and they're the ones consuming the offerings that were supposed to be for the Lord. And it continues on, and then the book of Samuel also talks about the burnt offerings, the peace offerings that the Lord is supposed to be receiving in order for him to favor the land where they are. And then Samuel, eventually Saul gets appointed, but he doesn't do his job. And it's talking about the different kingships and the different rulers in the different divisions, the different lands. And it's all a mess. It's like really messy. A lot of people dying, a lot of people dying from not having fruits in the land, from not properly doing what they're supposed to be doing. But everything is so confusing because the way that they talk in the new revisions of these books that are supposed to be, they were heavily edited. So the Nag Hammadi library are some of the books that were secrets that were not in the Bible, or were truly so heavily edited that they do no longer tell the truth, basically. And the Shining Ones is a great book. I highly recommend the Shining Ones book, because it's amazing. I think there is a lot of information in the book that you will find very valuable. And, it talks about the Garden of Eden also, with the whole concept of the serpent, and the serpent is supposed to be a shiny one like the Anunnakis. And the Anunnakis, we all know that there was two brothers, Enki and Enlil, and one of them wanted the humans to do one thing, and another one wanted to enslave them. So everything ties together. It really does. So you will want to make sure that, because I know my answers for myself and I know what I'm saying to me is true. But remember, there are different levels of parallel reality, alternative reality, different timelines, different things that depending on your path, you might be tapping into something that is completely different than what I'm finding for mine. So you want to do your own meditation and get your own answers. Let's see. This is the book that I'm referring about, the Hammadi scriptures. In the Gospel of Judah, he teaches Judah that he knew the truth as no one else did. And the mystery of the betrayal, obeying a command from Jesus to initiate his sacrifice. So it was and I always had a huge problem with this, because I always felt like something is wrong with the whole betrayal thing, because it reminds me of the Scorpion constellation, how they talk about the Scorpion constellation being the betrayal. And this, and what I have been channeling is that the Scorpion constellation left us major clues about the shadows and how to deal with the shadows, so we can go through the ascension and become a Phoenix rising. So I just, I think we need to read and decode things and don't take everything as it is, because a lot of these books have been so heavily edited that they do no longer tell the whole truth. So the Gospel of Thomas, it was fascinating, because it's basically talking about how nothing will be hidden. Everything is inside of us. All the answers are inside of us. And then it talks about the human heart. It has been created, the whole body has been created by the demiurge, the archons, the divine beings. And this is just fascinating, because it is in one of the channeling sessions that I did, it is in the human heart that we open up in order for us to go through the ascension process. But the spirit that is within us is the key to going through the ascension process through the gates of the heart. So these are gates that I'm referring about. So in the book of John, the song is now clarified. Jesus is the Father, Mother, and Son. So Jesus in this case is not being taken as just as a human that was here as a prophet, but as something that is inside of us. And when we go through our ascension process, we can actually become the Father, the Mother, divine feminine, divine masculine, and spirit, right? Because the song is the spirit. This is just fascinating. Completely fascinating. I find it completely fascinating. So again, we already talked about Jaldabaoth, and he became saying that he is a jealous God and there is no other God besides me. So that means that he knows that he's a jealous God, because he knows he's not the only one. And again, he created the different aeons, different fallen angels that he created, and together they created Adam. So Jaldabaoth created Adam as an initially weak copy of himself. So, but Sophia says, I made a mistake, and the father and mother says, okay, we're gonna help, and they send 5 angels to talk to Jaldabaoth, and the angels tell him he hasn't moved because you need to breathe into Adam. So when he breathes into Adam, the spirit is the power of his mother. So, but he didn't know that. But when he breathed into Adam, the mother's power went out of Jaldabaoth and into Adam's body. And that's when he moved and he was enlightened. So the spirit is the mother. So in this case, the spirit is Eve, life, enlightened inside. So the Archons might be able to overpower, but they wanted to be sure that they couldn't do that. So what they did is that they sent Aaron a helper, and that helper was life. So she's the one that helped to continue the work that was now needed to be done in order for the divine, the mother, the father, and the son to again pick up the pieces that were created, these new humans that were created, to come back to source. Let's see if there's anything here that I want to mention. Christ's revelation concludes with the story of Yaldabaoth's further enslavement of the human race through the origination of fate, the coming of the flood, and the intercourse between the angels and human woman led to humanity's sexual enslavement. The mother already has light in her scene, the 5 seals. See if there is anything else worth mentioning, because the whole book is, you know, it's amazing. And obviously I talked about different books, not just one. Let's see. Okay, let me just go back here 1 second. The first human, the image of the invisible spirit that is forethought, which is Barbelo and thought, along with foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal and true. The 5 androgynous aeons, which are the 10 aeons, which is the Father. As soon as they shall receive this from the Spirit, it glorify the Holy Spirit and the perfect forethought. They shall ask to be given mind. This is when Sophia is being created, and eventually Sophia decides that she wants to do it on herself, just like the Father did, but she doesn't realize that she made she didn't realize that that was a big mistake. So she creates Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth decides to create his own realm where he can be the ruler, the king. And then Sophia asks for help. That's when Adam becomes enlightened. And then the Garden of Eve is created to keep Adam enslaved, but the snake comes and tells Adam to eat from the tree of life, from the tree of knowledge. And basically they awaken to their consciousness and realize how powerful they are. So the rulers, that Yaldabaoth and the Archons, tried to imprison humanity, and that's why they created so much mess with the book of so all those books that talk about the kinships, the separations, the fighting. So much fighting in those books, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of things that were needed in order for them to continue to receive the light that they needed in order for them to continue to live. Because if they don't, then they have to go and be judged by the Father, Mother, Son, by the Creator. So let's see if there is anything else. Sorry guys, I just don't want to miss anything now that I have you here. Okay, so I don't know if I have anything else to share. I think you're gonna have to Jesus appeared to the disciples again and went to the different generation, one that is great and holy. His disciples said to him, Lord, what is the great generation that is exalted over us and is holy, but is not present in this realm? They're talking about the tetragrammaton, away from the others. The discipline behold, this is what we talked about already. Hold on 1 second. So no one person more birth is worthy to go into the house of you have seen. That place is kept for the saints, where sun and moon will not rule, nor the day, but they will stand there always in the eternal realm. Look, I have told you the mysteries of the kingdom. I have told you the arrows of the stars. This is the book, the Gospel of Judas. So Judas became the bad guy because he's the one that helped Jesus turn the body in so they can basically crucify the body. This is what I was referring to. Jesus said, Judah, those who bring sacrifice to sackcloth, God, everything evil, but you will see all of them. Tell you the truth. Okay, this is the book of Enoch, and this is different scholars talking about the evil spirits should torment men without restraint, inhabiting animal and possessing men unto the days of the Messiah. Then 1/3 of them remain before him. And this is just talking about the war that began with Noah and all of that stuff, and the flood. And, in some versions, the flood, we can see it as purifying. So it's not that it was really supposed to kill anyone, but it was a purification for those that needed to be purified. So in this page it says, look, they are one people and they begin to do this now, and now nothing will be withheld from them. Let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, and they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and they will not be in agreement together with no one purpose until the day of judgment. This is talking about the Archons separating people on purpose so they cannot be united, so that they cannot understand each other. In the book of the fallen angels, the watchers, and the origins of evil, this is also in the book of Enoch, and it's talking about the change becoming more and more ugly and demonic. God spoke to Lilith's heart, saying, you have chosen this evil path, and so should you become evil. So she became succubus. And he goes through that whole thing where she becomes a succubus thing. I just found that fascinating. That's why I put it here. But the succubus obviously eats from the energy of others, especially blood and light. The first one began to create the head. This is when they became to create. This is in the book of Enoch, but also in the book of Genesis, and also you could see this is, I don't think this is in the book of Genesis in this way. It's completely different, but it's not in the book of Genesis, but this is what this is referring to in the book. This is the real, the advanced version of the book of Genesis, if you want to call it like that. So they created the different, within the different Archons gave different pieces of themselves to create Adam. So I don't think I have. So Adam, fear not, this is Satan and his host. He wishes to deceive you as he deceived you at first. For the first time he was hidden in the serpent, but this time he's come to you in the likeness of an angel of light, in order that when you worship him, he might enslave you in the very essence of God. So he's the Archon Yaldabal is using similar shape-shifting like a god, appearing like a god, so he can be the one to be worshipped. So when Adam heard these words, he believed and he was tricked. And then he says, speak the word of God and he should receive it. But Adam knew something was wrong and he asked and he received guidance. And then the angels come to help him and they say, okay, take Eve as your wife. And this is very important because in some versions it says that the Archons taught the humans how to work with medicine, how to work with the plants, how to work with herbs, how to do things, how to communicate and have supernatural abilities. And what this book of Enoch, the book of Enoch here is confirming that when they saw that they had to help Adam and Eve, they approved and gave knowledge to Adam and Eve about the different things, the plants, the herbs, the different supernatural abilities, so that they can defend themselves from the Archons and know better. So this is very important. In the book of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I just found that interesting because he also talks about sacrifices, and he also talks about the blood drinking male deities, which was interesting to me because we can see the same concept appearing in different books, and I just completely found that fascinating. So the Talmud talks about also the different demons and different reasons why some of those demons might be within us, and how we need to bring them to the light in order for us to go through our ascension, because otherwise they will keep us in the darkness. So, I know this has been a pretty long, but I want to take a couple of more minutes. In the book of Revelation, the revelation of Adam, text from the Hammadi book in page 351, the power, they're talking about what is the power of this human who is superior to the Archons. The Archons will punish the flesh of the human on whom the Holy Spirit have come. They know the humans are more powerful, so they want to punish us. And then in the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God. He was God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light that they're talking about is the spirit that Yaldabaoth, he breathed into Adam, and when he did that, he became enlightened. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. This is just fascinating because this is what came out of the quantum healing session. When we learn about the quantum healing session that talks about the 114 and why 114, and this is 114, and in him was life, and the life was the light of all mankind, and the light was the spirit that was inside, that was breathed into Adam. So anyways, long story short, to say that, I think the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and the holy and the only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Full of grace and truth. This is what John 1:14 gave us in the quantum healing session as well, when he was talking about 1:14, meaning is unity, creation. It is the soul, spirit, and the Holy Spirit, the Son, and the body, the mind, substance, form, and eternity, material, immaterial, and constancy. This is the same thing, guys. So I don't know. I think, it's, I try to give you the clues that I found based on the channeling sessions that I did that confirmed to me what I was thinking all this time, that the sacrifices were feeding the negative forces. And the more that we do that, we continue to feed those forces. I know I went so many different tangents, but I was trying to give you the evidence that have been found. The Nag Hammadi test, it's an ancient text, and it was decoded, and it doesn't fit the same thing that we have in the Bible, because the Bible has been heavily edited. We have to remember that the Bible has been edited so many times by people that wanted to keep people afraid and fear. So we do have to take everything with a grain of salt and really do our meditations and tap into, because when we tap, we receive so many answers, whether we want to believe them or not. Like I did, I didn't want to believe it because it was so much. I didn't want to believe it. And I was like, what do I do with this? Why is this coming? I was very confused, to be honest with you. But I think the reason why this comes when we're ready is because we're ready to ascend and go to the different activations, the different ascensions, to truly understand things that for a lot of people might be very difficult to understand, because we don't want to understand that this body is nothing, right? This body is nothing. What's inside of us that connects us to the source is the most powerful, beautiful thing. And we can have access to that when we meditate, when we connect, when we remove the shadows and bring them to the light. And if the shadows are not part of us, then they need to go. If they're part of us, we need to bring them forward to the light. But we need to do our work. We need to do our work. And we also need to ask complicated questions. We need to be able to ask complicated questions so we can get complicated, big answers. So I'm going to leave it there because, it's been such a long session. And I could go on and on, but I really just wanted to give you some of the codes that I found about why the animal sacrifices, what they show me for simplicity's sake is that the animal sacrifices, when we do the prayers in any of the cultures that we are, we are bringing prayers, and those prayers have power because they're words, they have power, they have thought, they have emotion. But the animal sacrifices is feeding the dark energies. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, and it's okay if you don't have to trust me, you don't have to agree with me. You just got to ask yourself, that's all I want you to do. Or you know what, I don't want you to do anything. If you're still listening, obviously you're going to do what you need to do and going to meditate and get your own answers, going to research and get your own answers. But it doesn't mean that you have to agree with me. You can disagree with me and we can have a healthy discussion. But I hope that you understand that all I'm trying to do is get you to think things that are, things that we haven't been discussing for many, many years, because we have been led to believe that the way that things were done were the right things. And what we're finding, especially now with this new earth, as more secrets are being uncovered, is that we can no longer do what we used to do before, because we need to ascend. So I'm going to leave it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.